And welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe Podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. Already want to throw out here a very quick scheduling note because, George, I apologize, but I have lied to the audience. I said we'd be here 3 nights in a row to hit on all 3 days of minicamp. And, George, school is out early. Shane Steichen with a big reward to the team, but really a big reward also to us podcasters as well, as we are sitting here. If you want to get behind the curtain at 10:55 p.m., recording this pod here on Wednesday night, he gives us a break as minicamp has officially concluded, George. You had offensive and defensive linemen catching punts, and I'm sure it was a big team celebration when they caught those punts. And Shane Steichen said, minicamp is over. I'll see you in 6 weeks.
Yeah, there was a big celebration when he told them what the challenge was. We knew something was up because when they huddled, when the final horn sounded, there was suddenly a huge roar. And at the time, we're like, did they just cancel tomorrow's practice? And then they lined up for those punts, and we're like, nope, not yet. And apparently, there were 6 guys in line. The first 2 made the catches. So Shane said they made it a little bit too easy. Maybe you have to be a little more challenged when they break camp in Westfield, but quite the moment out there today. And yeah, the team celebration was pretty raucous, which everybody loves that last day of school, right?
Did you see the other 4 players who were lined up were in line to catch the punts? No? Any Quentin
But no, because
Nelson?
they just had like the offense on one side and the defense on the other. And so Matthew Vanderslice came out first and he caught the ball, and everybody was like, okay, let's see what's going to happen. And then Jamal Woods came out and he caught the ball, and then they all just, so I think they knew who they were, but they were all just kind of in their group and waiting. And neither one of them even bobbled it. It was clean catches both ways, and off they go into the summer. And now the big rule is for no one to get in trouble.
If that's the truth, that's for sure. If we're doing some emergency pods here, because Colts player got themselves in a little bit of trouble, that's definitely not ideal. Not ideal to say the least. I'm trying to think, George, if we had to pick a player each that we needed to catch a punt in order to kind of like have the podcast canceled, let's just say, offensive, defensive lineman, I think I'd go Quentin Nelson. Feels the most athletic. I feel like he's the one I would trust the most, where I feel like he would have good hand-eye coordination. It's a lot of hang time there. DeForest Buckner's on my mind, but I think I would go Quentin Nelson over him. Anyone that you would trust more? I know you're a big Grover Stewart guy. Grover Stewart in your mind can do no wrong. Would you trust him with the practice to be canceled on the line to be catching a punt?
There's no doubt Grover's going to come through. The only problem is he'll probably deflate the football in his hands as he catches it. He'll catch it so strongly that the ball just bursts. I like the Nelson pick. He's going to do the celebrity softball game this year. He's going to be one of the captains. So, I mean, you figure he's got good hands, right? I mean, you want to do that. There's also some pretty interesting basketball tape from him from high school. So he's kind of a beast on the basketball court. I think he can definitely catch a punt. I don't think there's anything Buckner can't do. So you assume that he would work well too. Obviously, Big Grove is going to be a guy that can get this done. But I mean, look, they may have the deepest pass catching line in the league. Who knows? I mean, judging by today's result of the 2 guys who went out there, they may have the best punt fielding offensive and defensive lines in the NFL this year.
Don't have to worry about depth at punt returner this year. Let's just say, they could go 10 deep, no problem. We'll just keep running them out there. So there's a positive.
You want to see Grover Stewart return a punt. Come on.
Oh, without a doubt. Oh my goodness. I don't know what it would take. I mean, we're talking about 30 injuries, maybe. I mean, what, 53 guys dressed or 46 guys dressed on a Sunday? It'd probably take 40 injuries.
You do it though, like in an exhibition game. No one's even going to try to tackle them. They're just going to get out of the way. That's a business decision at that point. Just let the big man go. He can go ahead and return the punt.
You better. If I was a gunner on the other team, I'm yelling at him, fair catch, fair catch. Or I'm yelling at the ref, he's fair. Yeah. You do not want Big Grove catching it, and then all of a sudden getting a head of steam now going down the poor punter. You talk about business decision. If I'm the punter, I'm walking up to the sidelines. I'm not going Pat McAfee and trying to jack him up. I'm just walking off the side. Here you go. Enjoy your touchdown.
You can't use Pat McAfee as a bar. That guy was at WrestleMania. I mean, that's not your normal punter. You
True.
got to go with
That's true.
that's not going to work. You definitely don't want to get involved like that. No, I mean, if you're the punter and Grover Stewart's the return man, I'm with you. Right to the sideline. As soon as you kick it, just right to the sideline. You're off the field. You're done for the day.
Yeah, I'm with you there for sure. Because even if a punter tries, just repel off them and save yourself the embarrassment. Stay off the Grover Stewart highlight reel. That should be your mantra. You're thinking for sure. All right, let's get to serious business, George. Although that was very serious. Grover Stewart again.
Very
If he's
serious.
listening, or Shane Steichen is listening. I'm sure he's a big fan of the pod. Shane, let's go preseason game number 2, number 3, number 1. Give the fans and really give George what he wants to see. That is the ultimate reward for the biggest Grover Stewart fan out there.
But
For
90 minutes.
sure.
I want a goal line carry. That one's the realistic goal here. A handoff at the goal line for Grover Stewart. It needs to happen.
They don't have a fullback, right? Technically on the roster?
Yeah, they don't have a fullback. So get him in there, put him out there at fullback, line him up behind Anthony Richardson. There's no defensive line that wants to see that.
I agree. Come on. Do the right thing here, Shane. Do the right thing. And maybe also save Jonathan Taylor some wear and tear down by the goal line there as well. Which, speaking of which, George, big time conversation now about Jonathan Taylor and his future going to the final year of his deal. Should the Colts extend him or not? He had some very interesting comments today that we'll get into here in a little bit. But for me, I don't know how you feel, George. I think the answer to me is very simple if you're Chris Ballard. You extend him, no doubt about it. I understand the rest of the NFL is very anti-paying running backs. We're seeing right now with Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott getting cut from their respective teams this offseason after getting an extension a few years ago. Right now, Saquon Barkley and the Giants are at a stalemate, and Josh Jacobs as well, and the Raiders are at a stalemate where they feel very frustrated and seemingly not a lot of ground is being not a lot of ground. I guess a lot of ground is still there to be laid in terms of their contract negotiations. That was just a terrible analogy, so please ignore that one. Anyway, the point is, Giants and Saquon Barkley are far away from a contract. Josh Jacobs and the Raiders are far away from a contract. I don't think the Colts and Jonathan Taylor should be far away from a contract. This is a guy that obviously is very talented, and to make Anthony Richardson's life easier, George, to me, it's an absolute no-brainer. You put easily the most talented guy on offense next to Richardson and have his development be that much easier.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things they've talked about all offseason too. You know, what that duo can be. I think Taylor's benefit in play action, which is great for a young quarterback. But you know, there's been a lot of talk about how Richardson can help Taylor in the run game because of the threat that Richardson has. But that goes both ways. Defenses are going to be very aware of where 28 is. And so if you're doing anything from an RPO to, you know, more of a straight option play that he's involved in, he's going to draw as much attention as anybody on the field, and it's going to open up some explosive plays, I think, for Anthony Richardson. I do think it'll be interesting to see if the NFL changes its model a little bit when it comes to running backs. I feel like we may be entering a point where maybe 2 or 3 year deals make more sense for them than these 5-year deals. Just because you see that it's about 2 or 3 years when these divorces start happening. It was 3 years into the deal with Dalvin Cook, and then the Vikings wanted to redo it, and now he's on the open market. That seems to be the way it is with most of these big running back contracts. So to me, if you do a 2 or 3 year deal to begin with, they're going to get more security than they get on these franchise tags, which is obviously the problem right now for Jacobs and Barkley. But at the same time, as a team, you're only locked in for those 3 years, and then at the end of that run, you can look at it again. A lot of that for me was looking today when I was writing my story on Taylor in this situation. He's 24, so he's still a young guy. There's still a lot of runway there. Cook is 27, and he just got released, and Barkley is 26. You give Taylor a 2 or 3 year deal, he's right there in that range where they are now when they're going through their. To me, it just makes sense. That seems to be that 26, 27. It's almost like NFL teams are with running backs like Leo DiCaprio is with girlfriends right now. They get over 25, they're looking for the next guy. And I think, you know, just kind of understand that and accept that and make it better for everybody involved. I think you want it. Here's the thing from Taylor's standpoint that I think is big. What keeps going through my mind is Marlon Mack. When Taylor was a rookie, Marlon Mack's coming off a 1,000-yard season. He's in the final year of his deal. Everybody's looking at him getting that chance to hit the open market, get the big money, tears his Achilles tendon in the first half of the first game. And I looked it up today. He's played 14 games in the league since then. The last 2 seasons,
Wow.
or last, 3 seasons counting that year, 14 games for 3 teams. It's just awful to watch, that kind of thing happen. And those stories happen to running backs all the time. Melvin Gordon was not that long ago, one of the top running backs in the league, and now he's basically a backup for the Broncos. It's the way that market goes. I think they deserve some security beyond what the franchise tag's giving them because of the situation you saw with Marlon Mack. I think these 2 to 3 year deals might be that sweet spot where the team's happy, the player's happy, and everyone can move forward together.
I guess the only thing I would push back against that is I just wonder if you're like Jonathan Taylor and other running backs in his situation, how much it's obviously all about the guaranteed for the running backs, right? And guaranteed money for running backs is nowhere near what receivers are getting, nowhere near what obviously quarterbacks are getting. It's not a ton of money relative to what other positions are getting. But I just wonder, like, if you're Jonathan Taylor, 2-3 year deal, like I guess the only thing I don't know is how much money guaranteed you would get. And obviously that's I'm sure what what he's prioritizing versus a 5-year deal. Maybe it's a little easier to spread a lot of those guarantees out, although with how contracts are structured, most of that guarantees anyway in the first 2 or 3 years. So I think you actually make a good point, George, in the sense that like maybe those short-term deals are good. And if you're the Colts, you give him a 2 or 3 year deal, he's 26 or 27 by the time the deal ends, and things go well and he's still at the top of his game. Another 2 or 3 year deal, maybe now you're more open to doing if, again, the production is there compared to, oh, we got to lock him in long term and let's make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And then, as we've been seeing, Zeke Elliott was 6-year deal, didn't make it through. I forget. I think Dalvin Cook was a 4-year extension, if I'm not mistaken, but obviously he didn't make it through. Was it 5? 5-year deal. He didn't make it through. So you are right in the sense that we are seeing a lot of longer extensions, running backs not make it whatsoever. And Todd Gurley, going way back, at this point, 2018, 2019, I don't think he even saw the extension that he signed. I think he got cut that quickly. So it's a situation where teams are moving off of running backs very quickly. My question to you is this, George. Do you think the running back position is undervalued? Like, has it gotten to a point where teams now are getting too crazy in terms of moving off of guys that are still a lot of juice left, a lot of talent left, and maybe are overlooking the position?
Yeah, I think you can make that argument. I think it's interesting when you look around the league because you look at the 2 Super Bowl teams, last year, and I don't think either one of them had an overpowering running back by any stretch of imagination. I think that's why you keep seeing it happen because Philly gets there with running back by committee and then lets Miles Sanders go at the end of the year. He's off in another new home, and I think the Chiefs had a rookie. I think Pacheco was back there
From Rutgers.
So
Big Ten represent.
I think that's why you see it happening so much because you see teams do that. But flip side, you go the year before and the Bengals get there with Joe Mixon, who's pretty good running back, and a guy who's probably helped out a young quarterback in Joe Burrow there quite a bit. But I think that's what it all comes back to. You look at the top teams in the league and how many of them have a running back that alone scares you. The Eagles' running game in whole was good and was definitely a major factor. But there wasn't one running back on that roster that really stood out and the teams focused on. It was the group and it was the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, who was getting it done. And obviously the Chiefs feel like they can throw anybody at running back and make it work, and have kind of shown that they can. Because if you get Patrick Mahomes, you can get away with that. But at the same time, I go back to the 2021 season here, and when the Colts were cooking, when they were hot in the middle of that season before the collapse at the end, Jonathan Taylor was carrying that team. It was all on his back. They were, a bully offensive line, and Jonathan Taylor running. And the Patriots game to me, I think, was, the one that stood out. That season, for me, I've covered the Colts since 2011. And that season, it's that, and I think it was 2014 for T.Y. Hilton when he led the league in receiving yards. Those are the 2 best individual seasons I've seen from a Colt. And that Patriots game was one of the most dominant performances I've seen somebody have, certainly against Bill Belichick in a Colts uniform. So I look at that and I say it's worth giving Jonathan Taylor the extension, because if you're going to get 85% of that guy, over the next couple of years, it's well worth whatever money he's going to get. And again, like you said, it's not going to be quarterback money. It's going to be good money, but it's not going to be 50 million a year. Not talking about that top of the market. I don't know where it falls, but if you can get him in the 10 to 12, maybe even a little bit higher than that range, I think you do it. I think he's a guy that has been well embraced by the fan base. I think everybody here is, in Indy is a big Jonathan Taylor fan. And again, he and T.Y. Hilton had the two best individual seasons that I've seen since I've covered the Colts now in more than a decade. A guy like that, I don't think you want to let him walk. You don't want to see him, putting up those big numbers in a different uniform.
So right now, Christian McCaffrey is the highest salary in terms of money per year for a running back, $16 million. Alvin
And he's
Kamara's
the
too is
passing
15.
element too. With McCaffrey's a little bit of a unicorn because of how useful he is in the passing game. Not that Taylor's not a receiving running back, but it's not what you're paying him for.
Right. And so you look at especially this Colt situation where it's like, is $14 million a year like crazy for Jonathan Taylor? I don't think so. Like that's part of the reason why I asked you, like, is the NFL undervaluing running backs? I do think it's by team basis because you're right. When you have Patrick Mahomes, yeah, you don't have to worry about the run game if you're the Chiefs. You can use a 7th-round rookie like we just saw win a Super Bowl. No problem that the running game is really just more of I'll keep him minus once in a while more than we got to rely on it. For the Colts, like you said, when they're at their best in 2020 and 2021, they're running through Jonathan Taylor. They have to value the running back more than other teams. And especially when you have a rookie quarterback, so you don't have a lot of money tied up right now into the quarterback position, I don't see what the harm is. And it really should be not even a conversation really at this point. It absolutely should be, let's lock up JT, no doubt about it. We got to make sure by week 1 this guy's under contract. Because also, let me ask you this, George. A lot of people overall in the NFL, like, this is not a Colts thing, this is just an overall NFL philosophy. A lot of people freak out about running backs because you give them the big-time salaries and the contracts. And obviously, as we know, very few, if any, end up seeing the actual end of that contract. But let me ask you this, because I don't think this gets brought up enough. What's the worst case that happens when you extend a running back? They get hurt, or like you said, that you release them because their production just falls off a cliff. Okay.
Or they won't restructure in Cook's case.
Or sorry, what?
Or they won't restructure in
Or
Cook's
they won't
case.
restructure. And then you got to cut them. So it's like those 3 options are the 3 worst options that could happen to you when you give a running back a contract extension. My response is, okay, you cut them. It's not like you cut players all the time. With the salaries and with most of the guaranteed money, front loaded in the contract the first 2 or 3 years. And for the most part, we have seen a lot of these guys, Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook, make it through the first few years of their contract extension before they get cut. By the time you're cutting these guys later on at age 26 and age 27 and age 28, there's like no guaranteed money left or very little that doesn't really impact your salary cap. So it's like, if you could tell me right now, you could have 3 really high level years of Jonathan Taylor left before he gets hurt and he kind of falls off a cliff, I'm signing him to an extension right now tomorrow. I'll sign up for that. I'll take that. Because at that point, when his play either decreases or he can't stay on the field consistently, the money that he's going to be getting at that point is going to be nowhere near as consequential as if you have to cut a quarterback or have to trade a wide receiver that wants out and you give him all this guaranteed money. There's really, George, no harm after the first 2 years of a running back getting paid big money, because once you got to move off of them, it's pretty easy to do so. And it's not like the Cowboys or the Vikings right now are reeling because they had to cut Zeke and Dalvin Cook.
No, exactly. They're gonna live through it. And I think that's what you're talking about. If you look at, you're talking about $14 million a year. If you look at a 5-year, $70 million deal for Jonathan Taylor right now, it's not going to bankrupt this team. And I think one of the things that really helps the Colts in that situation is having the rookie quarterback. For the next few years, you don't have a big contract coming from that position. So you can pay the running back a little bit. And by the time Richardson is off of that deal, Taylor's contract's going to be over or got 1 year left. It's not going to be an issue at that point. So I think I don't see the harm. I think you've got the room in there. You've probably got enough room with the rookie quarterback to sign both him and Pittman as far as that goes, and get them under the contract, get them under the cap right now. And then, let them help develop your rookie quarterback. And then if he turns into the guy that he could be, Then you can get cheap at those positions later, like the Chiefs do, and still survive.
That's right. And I'm glad you brought up Pittman too, because that's another thing. That's I think another reason if you're the Colts, you got to take into consideration the only sure thing right now you have on your offense is Jonathan Taylor. Like, I like Michael Pittman Jr. I think the Colts like Michael Pittman Jr. But we see how high the wide receiver salaries are skyrocketing. I would be surprised at this point, George, if Michael Pittman Jr. does get a contract extension before week 1. I think that's going to be something that's going to probably
Oh
go
yeah.
into next offseason. So if he's doesn't perform at a high level and he still wants big money, and as we see with Christian Kirk, it only takes one team to dole out maybe more money than he's worth, he's gone. And if he balls out and plays well, okay, it's still, let's say, you're looking at an extension, then you worry about that next year, but it's like not even right now a guarantee. So if you don't extend Jonathan Taylor, well, there's no guarantee then that Michael Pittman Jr. can live up to being a number 1 wide receiver. And there's a realistic option where the Colts could go into next year without their top running back and their top receiver, and you have Anthony Richardson, Alec Pierce, and who else?
And
So it's
that's
like,
no way to support your young quarterback. I mean, to
right,
me, the
take the
thing, like
sure
right
thing.
now, you want these guys to grow with him. You want him to have people that he's comfortable with, that he knows around. And again, it's an old saying in football, but it remains true. Sometimes the best friend of a quarterback is the running back. That and a good defense. Those are the two best ways to support. Go back to when Peyton Manning was a young Colt, and he was leaning on Edgerrin James. And yes, they ended up winning the Super Bowl without him, but those early years during Manning's development, Edgerrin James was a tremendous part of getting the Colts where they were in a position that they can become Super Bowl champions. And then after Manning developed into the Peyton Manning we all know, James moved on, and everybody lived happily ever after. So I don't see why it can't work the same way with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson.
And two, like you're like, right, you need talent around your quarterback. And to me, the position doesn't matter on offense. Like you need a talented right guard. And if that's the guy, boom, you plug it. Like every position helps. Or if you just have a very talented player there, you plug him in because it can only help your young rookie quarterback develop, especially when he's a guy of Anthony Richardson who we expect a lot of highs, a lot of lows with. Like this is also too, Jordan. I think like not enough people realize this. Like, yes, we all look at the quarterback as the most important position in all sports, but you still can't win a Super Bowl with a quarterback alone. Just like in the NBA, you can't win the finals with just one superstar. You just can't do it. You need also a team, but also a lot of talented guys. And you could point to Mahomes and look, he just won a Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. He also has a Hall of Fame tight end and a Hall of Fame head coach on his side on offense. So it's not like sure, he's doing it by himself, but he's really not doing it by himself. We saw the Eagles, how loaded they were. Tom Brady has Bill Belichick and also, at times had a really good defense as well. Like you look at every
And Rob
team
Gronkowski.
and Rob Gronkowski. I know they didn't win a Super Bowl with Randy Moss, but you had Randy, like he's had different players throughout the time. I mean, you look at Peyton. I know that, like you mentioned before, they didn't win with Andrew James on the team, but you had Reggie Wayne, you have Marvin Harrison, two guys that are going to be in the Hall of Fame, I think, eventually, especially in Reggie's
That's
case.
Clark.
Dallas Clark, like you need talented players around the quarterback. It's not just, oh, here's the quarterback. Your Anthony Richardson is going to save us and make everyone around him better. That's not how it works. That is not how Joe Burrow came in with some talent around him and T. Higgins. Then you get Jamar Chase, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, that Bengals offense really takes off because you gave him young talent around him. You got to keep the guys that are talented around Richardson to help him develop. And Jonathan Taylor is absolutely one of those guys.
Yeah, and to me, especially in these early years, his ability to make things easier for Anthony Richardson to dictate some defensive looks and things like that are just going to help the rookie quarterback out in so many ways. I don't know what number you'd have to get to that he's not worth it. I really think at some point you just pay him. Now, not going to get ridiculous, but if he's a top 5 running back when this is all said and done, I think he's earned it. And I wouldn't, again, I'm with you. I wouldn't even flinch at that. What's the worst case scenario? He gets injured or, he declines for some reason that you don't see coming, and then you move on. It's not, like you said, it's not one of these albatross deals that's around your neck that you can't get out of. It's not Kyler Murray in Arizona. It's
Right.
a whole different
Right.
situation. So I really don't see the harm in it. I understand the undervaluing of the position. We talked about that right at the top of this podcast. I understand teams like Kansas City Philadelphia getting the Super Bowl without these star running backs. But this roster isn't Kansas City and it isn't Philadelphia right now. And I think Jonathan Taylor is a really critical part of what this team does. Pay him as such and let him help your young quarterback grow.
Especially when, again, the two most important positions, or maybe two out of the three most important positions, especially with how left tackle is getting paid, but two out of the three other most highest paid positions in quarterback and receiver, you're not paying anyone top flight money right now. So it's like when you have the luxury of right now, you don't have a number one receiver in terms of salary wise, and you don't have a quarterback that's getting top 10, top 5 money even, you can afford again to splurge right now on a running back. And I'm glad you brought the Andrew James point with Peyton, because it's like, even if this team doesn't win a Super Bowl, let's say with Jonathan Taylor on the team, but he in these 3 years, let's say, really helps Anthony Richardson develop, the money is worth, like the investment is worth it. The Colts, like the Edgerrin James investment is worth it if it helped Peyton get to the point where he felt comfortable and then was able to take over a team when he was ready. And obviously, as you know, it kind of helped lead to a Super Bowl. Like that investment is worth it. So you don't have to think about it of, oh, we're trying to win now and we're paying a running back all this money like the Titans are doing with Derrick Henry. We got to go compete now. It's all about developing Anthony Richardson. And one of the ways to do that is by putting super talented guys on the field that make defenses have to think twice, but just zoning all in on Anthony Richardson, because there's not a lot of other guys going into this year so far that teams will be sweating and teams will be worried about outside of quarterback. Jonathan Taylor is that guy, and he only will help make Anthony Richardson's life a lot easier this year.
That's the goal. That's the plan right now. And you've heard them spell that out. That's not some secret. I think they've mentioned several times. Jim Irsay may have mentioned it on draft day, how scary that combination could be.
Right. Can't make it a 1-year deal where you let him go after this year. You get into a big contract dispute. Speaking of which, George, Jonathan Taylor had some interesting words today where he said he wanted to be a Colt for life, kind of made it seem like the ball's on the court of the Colts when it comes to contract negotiations, and kind of stood up for the running back committee overall across the league, as he's, did mention Saquon Barkley and Dalvin Cook and what's going on there. He seems like someone who, rightfully so, again, will not be a pushover in these negotiations and does want to get compensated fairly, which it sounds like, which is a good thing. He knows his worth.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it was smart PR move on him. I don't think he said anything that he didn't believe, and it was all from his heart. But at the same time, it's a smart way to frame this. I want to be here. I love it here. I want to retire a Colt. It's up to them now. I mean, that's how you do this. Put that ball both in their court, in the minds of the fans, as well as financially. So I think the Colts have said that this is a deal that to get done, and we'll see how it goes. And, you watched the Quentin Nelson situation last year. It went all the way to week 1. I mean, it was the night before kickoff when it came down. So this could be similar. Maybe it happens sooner, but it could be a similar situation where it probably not going to get done overnight. It's a complicated thing on both sides. I mean, we've just talked about teams, that give these 5-year contracts. You're not reaching the end of that, even though it's easy to kind of cut it. Still not something that you love to do as a team. I'm sure from the team standpoint, you'd rather get that 2 or 3 year deal like I was talking about. So you got to look at that on that end. And then on Taylor's end, as I said before, all you got to do is look at Marlon Mack, his rookie year, to understand why he wants the security right now. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know that it's going to be fast. And the way he was talking today, I don't know that there's a wide gulf between them. He seems somewhat optimistic that a deal will get done, but he's also saying, look, I hope they value me as much as I value being here. It was basically the point of his, conversation today. And Taylor's a guy who chooses his words very carefully. I think that's an important thing. He's not a guy who just opens up to the media. He's never standoffish with anyone, but he a lot of times he's speaking in generalities. Whenever he starts speaking on specifics on a situation, people really listen. And if it's his contract talk in particular that he's talking about, you're really going to be paying attention to it. And I think he made some good points today. I also think the team is going to look at the overall context of what they want to do with the salary cap moving forward, and how long of a deal they want this to be. I think that's what it comes down to, is how many years is he willing to accept and how many years are they willing to go to. I think that's probably where the real negotiating is happening.
The exact quote from Jonathan Taylor on Wednesday, quote, "I want to retire a Colt, so hopefully the organization sees that the same, because I do," end quote. I think Chris Ballard does have pressure to get this done. You mentioned, I believe, in prior podcasts, for sure. So I want to give you credit there for being, the one who mentioned it first. But we've seen the Colts a lot reward their own, right? And kind of take pride in giving extensions to guys that they, draft and develop and kind of bring up years and years and years. And the reason why I think Ballard has pressure on him is because I think he's sending a message in a way to Anthony Richardson, in the sense that if you don't extend Jonathan Taylor, or even like it's tough because I know negotiations sometimes get ugly. And so at the end of the day, if the money is what sometimes if you're Jonathan Taylor, you got to do some things to get some money. If you're the team, you got to do some other things in order to maybe knock the number down. So I understand that sometimes, even if it gets ugly, it sometimes can't be avoided or has to happen for one side or another to get what they want. But even if this like really drags out and kind of gets contentious, which I don't think it will, but if it does, let's say, I think you're in a way sending a message to Anthony Richardson. Because if you're going to look at so far, Jonathan Taylor in his 3 years as a Colt, I think he's done so far, I would say, everything worthy of getting a contract extension outside of just the position he plays. And so I get it. Again, there's been a lot of devaluing of the running back position, but outside of just the position he plays, there is no reason not to give Jonathan Taylor an extension. He's been great so far. He's on the field. I understand he has an ankle injury and missed, some time last year, but also it's football. Players do get hurt. It's not like running back's the only position that suffers injuries. So if you're Anthony Richardson, I think in a way, if you see this get ugly, if you see a deal not get done, period, and a guy who wants to be here, and you would think on the field has done everything deserving of being here, not getting maybe the love from the team, it might have you think, maybe not even, a few years from now, but when he has maybe some more leverage when it comes to contract negotiations, do I really want to be here? Because I saw they treated other players and I didn't like the way he was treated. Maybe I want to go somewhere else. Is that a
I
stretch?
mean, no, and I think it sends a message to the whole locker room. I think definitely Richardson, it's the first like big negotiation of his career here. So I'm sure he's going to be keeping an eye on that, see how that goes. But Zaire Franklin came into the media room the other day and said John Taylor's the best running back in the league, and then flat out, no doubt about it in his mind. There's a lot of guys in the locker room that feel that way, and so again, if you're getting cheap with him or you're getting contentious with him, I think it'll send a negative shockwave throughout the locker room. There's always stuff that has to happen, and I'm sure the ankle is going to play into this. They've got a lot more medical information on that than we do, and I'm sure that's going to be part of this, how they feel about him going forward, and then just the general wear and tear on running backs across the league. There's a reason 26, 27, 28 is that time frame, because a lot of them do start to break down when they get into that territory. But you see some of them don't too. I mean, Dalvin Cook was still an 1,100-yard rusher. It's not like he's at the end of his run here.
He has
The
four
Vikings were
straight
just trying to
1,000-yard
move.
seasons.
Right. I think the
Like
Vikings are
he
just trying to
sucked.
move money around. So it's not unprecedented that a guy can keep going, through that period. Derrick Henry's reaching into that neighborhood, and he's still going strong at this point. But I think they've got to look at all those things, longevity. And I think two concerns, to play devil's advocate, are the ankle, obviously, but also just the number of carries he's had, both in the NFL, but all the way back to Wisconsin, where he was, really heavy workhorse guy. If I'm from a team standpoint, those are probably the two things that I'm concerned with. Again, that's why I go back to that 2 or 3 year deal. I think it's good for everybody. It gets you real money. You get security of that. You get the guaranteed money from a running back standpoint, from a team standpoint. You've got a short window here to look and see if he's going to hold up. And if he does, then you can revisit this again in 2 or 3 years. But, we'll see. If it's a 5-year deal, I don't think that's wrong on the team's part at all, because as we talked about, it's probably a 2 or 3 year deal really anyways, only a 5-year deal on paper. So we'll see where it all comes out to. But I think that's the kind of stuff, if I'm the team, that's where my worry is. If I'm Jonathan Taylor, my worry is Marlon Mack and what happened with him, and I don't want that to repeat itself with me.
Right. And like you just mentioned before, like I said, even if that, like, you're right, the workload is obviously a concern in the sense of longevity, and can Jonathan Taylor keep up playing at a high level at age 28 and 29 when you have all that wear and tear in your body? But again, I go back to what we just talked about before. If you got to cut him at 28, year 4 into the deal, it's easy to do. So like, it just goes back to, we're on the same page here. You got to get it done for your Chris Ballard. There's no excuse not to. if I put the over under date right now, it's just most people listen to this on June 15th, Wednesday or Thursday. If I put it at August 15th, 2 months from Wednesday, as the over under date for a Jonathan Taylor extension getting done, basically about midway through camp, roughly, would you take the under on that on happening before, or the over that you think it's going to be kind of closer to the Quentin Nelson right up until, week 1 here is when it's going to race up to?
That's I like that too, because Quentin Nelson was right up to week 1. And I have recency bias with that. I think that's always something you got to watch. But I think
Wasn't
Shaq
Ryan
was
Kelly around this time?
his was early. I think Shaq was late July, I want to say. I feel like I was on vacation in Michigan when that one happened. I don't know for sure. Maybe I was on vacation with the 49ers when Fred Warner happened. And then it was when we got back with Shaq. I want to say it was like late July, early August with him. Braden Smith was right at the start of training camp.
August 8th for Shaq Leonard.
So August 8th. So right there at the start of training camp. Braden Smith would have been right in that same general time frame. Maybe a couple days one way or the other. So I think it's a really good over-under because
I'm glad. That's perfect. July 28th for Braden Smith.
Braden was probably right before training camp, or like report day
Right.
would have been
You report right into the contract negotiation room.
That's a really
I'll buy more time for you because I'm going to go under. I do think this contract will get done sooner rather than later. I think in large part, I think the biggest thing is Jonathan Taylor wants to be there. Obviously, he wants to get paid, but I don't foresee him wanting to reset the market. And I think that, again, both sides, when right now, if you're the Colts, you don't have a quarterback you're paying big time money to, a wide receiver you're paying big time money to. I think you can be more flexible and maybe going up a little more, maybe meeting Jonathan Taylor's number a little bit easier than you would if, again, you have a quarterback on a big time salary and you got a number 1 wide receiver that you're paying big bucks to. So right now, because especially on the offensive end, especially the skill positions, you're not paying really anyone any sort of money whatsoever. I will say that I think that just leads to this deal getting done sooner than later. So if we put the over under date August 15th, basically smack dab in the middle of training camp, I'll go under, George. I think this gets done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, most of these have. When you look back through there, Smith was done, earlier than that. Shaq beat it by a week. Really, it's only Nelson that went deep into this. And some of that was because they were resetting the market. They knew that going in, that was going to be the situation. I do wonder if the Barkley situation has any sway here, just because you're watching that, and if he gets a deal done, if they do sign a long-term deal there, does that kind of? I would think there's some good comps there in that Barkley had 2 really good years. It was the offensive rookie of the year right away, had another 1,000-yard season. Then he had the injuries, came back last year with a big year. I think there's some comps there that one could be something that they're both looking at. That I still don't think McCaffrey is a straight up comp, because I think there's too much receiving element in McCaffrey's game. I think you as a team can argue that's a different position. It's running back, but it's
almost
different,
like a flex, like a hybrid sort of guy.
Yeah, he even played quarterback last year for him a little bit.
That's right. He was a playoff quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's a different creature because I don't know if his deal's really there, but I think you're looking at Derrick Henry, you're looking at Saquon Barkley, you're looking at the original deal that Dalvin Cook was under. Those are probably the comps that you would think fit here. So yeah, I'd probably still say under, but right in that. I think it'll be right in that neighborhood. I think it's gonna be closer to Shaq than to Braden Smith.
Let me ask you this. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I don't think we had a running back extension like recently. Right? Dalvin Cook was a few years ago. Zeke was like 2019. Derrick Henry was a few years ago too. I don't think, at least last year, I could be wrong again, but off the top of my head, just thinking, I don't think we had a recent running back extension. The reason why I bring that up is this. If you're Chris Ballard, do you want to beat the Giants to a possible deal? Or and for the Giants, just to put this in perspective, they have to, because Saquon Barkley's franchise, they have to reach an extension date by July 17th. After that date, they cannot extend until after the season's over. So they have a hard deadline. The Colts obviously do not. They could go all this year and see how he does before giving him a contract extension talking. So that July 17th date maybe, again, could make this question I'm about to ask you moot. But if you're Chris Ballard, would you prefer beating the Giants to a Saquon Barkley extension? And maybe you would think, because we've seen other positions one up each other, you would think, okay, if we get Jonathan Taylor in before Saquon Barkley, the Giants would probably have to, go above it in order to get Saquon happy. Or because you have not seen an extension happen in a few years, do you let the Giants set the market, like the recent running back market, and then you can base your extension with JT off of the number they give Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because I think you can argue it both ways. Maybe you get a little bit of a bargain if you get in there before Barkley. If you get in after, then you're probably going to have to top that deal. But at the same time, maybe the Barkley deal gives you a better baseline for where you need to be right now. Because like you said, it has been a couple of years since those last deals. And I really don't think the McCaffrey deal, I just don't think it qualifies here. So it'll be interesting to see like how that plays out. I think he's open to the idea of getting something done. I mean, from the comments today, I think he's open to the idea of getting something done before Barkley. So I definitely think it's worth pursuing. And the faster you get this out of the way, the better. It ends the talk for everyone. It gives Steichen some security moving forward. He knows, okay, this is the running back, beyond just this year. And it gives peace of mind to Anthony Richardson to say, okay, this guy that is going to be lining up next to me is going to be here for a while. So I can get comfortable with him and, start building that bond. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
I think, too, it works in the Colts' favor is obviously JT's 2 years younger than Barkley. And we talk about the age in 27, 20. It's kind of been the area where running backs fall off. And Saquon Barkley's now 20 going to year 6, but he's going to be 26. Like, if I'm the Colts, I think I would rather get it done faster. So that would be well under the date that we said of the over-under. Because again, the July 17th date is the final date the Giants and Barkley can extend. So you have to get that done if you're the Colts before that July 17th date. But I think it's also a way to kind of put pressure on the Giants because again, if you're Chris Ballard, you basically you got 2 extra years with Jonathan Taylor that again, if you give him some big time money, the Giants, I think would almost kind of put a little bit extra pressure on them of now all of a sudden you're going to surpass the JT deal with a running back who's been injured now multiple years and is 2 years older. So almost kind of making another organization squirm in a way and kind of putting them some pressure really on them to get a deal done. But I would definitely, I'm with you. I think I would try to get it done before Saquon. You kind of your own set the market and then see how the Giants and other teams react after that. But I do think kind of being a market setter is good because I don't think this will happen, George. But if the Giants just say, screw it, let's blow it up and let's just give them a massive Zeke-like deal, 6 years, $90 million. I mean, if you're
they could create a lot of problems for the Colts here if they want to. If they really blow that up, the Colts would have a really tough one to match.
And again, we saw Christian Kirk. It only takes one team to do it, and it resets the entire market. And you can, I think, easily point to Christian Kirk now being the reason why Tyreek Hill is a $30 million a year receiver, and Devonta Adams is a $30 million a year receiver, and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are about to cash in sooner rather than later too. All thanks to that Christian Kirk deal where he's getting 18 million. Hold on. If he's getting 18, I'm worth way more than my 25 or 26. And you see that market reset. If you're the Colts, I think you're like the Giants. I don't think will go anywhere near Christian McCaffrey's $16 million a year, but also don't take the risk. Because if they do, then you have to obviously up it.
Using your 14 million as a base point, because I think that's a really good number. I really think that's a good spot for him to come in. You go 4 years and 56 million, go a year over my 3 year thing, but not quite to that 5. I mean, you probably make that happen, right? 4 years, 56, and move forward. Maybe it's somewhere in that range.
I like it. And 4-year extension, maybe you can spread the money out over 5 years if you include this year as well. And you're able to kind of, do that as well. Like, again, there's a lot of smart people, George, that get paid a lot more money than we do to break down the cap and balance the money out. But I like that 456. I think it's absolutely a fair number for both sides. And it should be a number, like I said, that hopefully gets agreed to sooner rather than later. And we see Jonathan Taylor locked up for the foreseeable future here with the Colts going forward. Definitely before week 1, but hopefully before at least the over-under date that we do set here of August 15th. You, the listener, let us know here. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. Let us know on Twitter at GM Bremers, where you can find George at Ryan_Hickey in the number 3. You can find me. Would you pay JT? And also, if we set the over-under date of August 15th, you think it's no doubt about it, a contract will get done. Will get done before that date, or we see this kind of go right up until week number 1. Also comment wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a comment on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod. You could see me and George matching in our red shirts today. Did not color code that, but we're in our Tiger Sunday red here on a Wednesday evening. Getting you set here as well. All right, so because minicamp, George, has ended today, Wednesday, and so this is also like our mini camp recap, a very short, brief edition of that. Let's finish off by asking this question. It's another rough day in terms of the passing offense for the Colts here on Wednesday. So it's a rough day Tuesday, a rough day Wednesday. Especially with you being in the building watching practice. Are you right now going to training camp more concerned about the passing offense? Or are you more encouraged that, especially with this young secondary and no Shaq Leonard on the field, that maybe this defense is better than we thought? Which kind of end of the spectrum, as we kind of wrap up minicamp here, do you think you fall on as you head into training camp?
Yeah, right now I'm more on the concern about the offense. I think it's not surprising, and there's a lot of caveats that come with that. For one thing, a lot of top receivers are not on the field right now. You know, Michael Pittman really didn't do anything through the whole OTA period. Josh Downs missed the entire OTA period. Alec Pierce was out for a week. Jelani Woods missed the entire OTA period. Drew Ogletree, who I think is a guy who has a chance to be kind of a breakout guy. I think we don't talk a lot about him, but he was really having a great camp last year before the injury. He was ahead of Jelani Woods at that point. You know, when he gets back healthy, I think he's going to be a big part of this offense. He isn't another. Even Will Mallory has not been out there since rookie minicamp, you know, with foot injury. So that's part of it. You know, you're going pretty deep on that depth chart. And then we all knew from day one that this was going to be a process with Anthony Richardson. That he probably wasn't going to walk out there this time of year and just start throwing darts everywhere and look like Peyton Manning. I don't think that was ever the expectation for him. And you see flashes. I mean, just going back to today, you know, to be specific, there's one where he kind of 7-on-7, he sort of rolled out in the pocket, put really nice touch on the ball. Vincent Smith ran under it, made a nice catch, probably a 15, 20, 25-yard gain. Looked really good. Everything about it worked really well. You're like, all right, that's smooth. That's what you want to see. And then later on in 11-on-11, he kind of scrambles to the other side. Seems like he kind of gets sloppy with his footwork, rushes it a little bit, and the ball's late. He had Alec Pierce open for a split second and gave the defense time to get in there and knock the ball away. That one almost got intercepted, and you go, okay, he's got work to do. And it's been that way most of the time. When you see the raw numbers, you go, okay, he's 2 for 5. Well, that's only 11-on-11 work. One of those was a 60, 70-yard bomb that got broken up by Nick Cross that probably should have been intercepted off play action. So that's not a high percentage throw to begin with. You know, the other 4, they're all in between what I'm talking about. These little timing type things. That's what you're seeing mostly with him right now, is just that consistency with his delivery, consistency with his mechanics, consistency with his footwork, and doing it from one down to the next. You get a really good throw and you go, all right, he's getting it. And then you get something less than that and you go, okay, there's still work to do. But I don't know that that's not where we expected him to be on June 14th. You know, I don't think that's a big shock to anybody that that's where he's at. That being said, even Shane Steichen said today that the passing offense needs to be better, and it's something they need to work on. And Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson plan to be down in Florida quite a bit this offseason with receivers and doing just that.
I hear what you're saying. You're right. Part of the struggles with the offense has been just lack of availability from a lot of the prominent players that you expect to be suiting up come the regular season. I will say, though, for this question, I think I'm more impressed by the defense because, yes, while Anthony Richardson, to no surprise, is up and down, and to a lot of the guys he's thrown to right now, either are practice squad guys end of the roster guys or just flat out won't make the roster and be cut whatsoever. You look at the secondary, they're filled with a lot of young, inexperienced players, especially at corner. And to their credit, sure, it's against lesser competition, but at least they're making plays early on. Like you see Dallas Flowers making some plays. You see Jalen Jones making some plays. I get Darius Rush. I get, is it against the best competition? No. But at least they're making plays early on. Like I would argue, maybe outside of quarterback, I think the toughest transition from college to the NFL is corner. Just because the dramatic increase in talent of receivers that now you are guarding against, the complexity of the defenses that you're playing in, it's a lot to remember. It's a lot to look, how great the quarterbacks are. It's just, the jump is just to me so massive that I think it's really, really hard to have success early on in year number one. And again, it's just mini camp, but I like so far, at least, these guys are making plays and trying to earn a job, like giving you a reason to say, oh, maybe they can get on the field this year. And so, like, I will reward players for making plays and kind of getting the job done, even with the competition not being at its best.
And secondary's been a bit depleted too. I mean, to play devil's advocate and go against my own argument here, Juju Brents hasn't practiced yet. We knew he wasn't going to. He's still recovering from that wrist surgery. It was always training camp was always the target date for him. Darius Rush was out there really early, but he hasn't been out there pretty much all of OTAs with the hamstring situation that he's dealing with. Obviously, the Isaiah Rodgers situation took another guy off the field about midway through this process. So you've got even younger guys out there than they expected in some situations and bigger roles. So yeah, Dallas Flowers made probably the play of minicamp today. Backpedaling, stopped that in midstream, made a leaping interception on Gardner Minshew. Would have been a pick six if it was a game. Really outstanding play by him. He had another nice breakup on a deep ball with Minshew earlier in practice. So is he a guy who you're going to keep a really close eye on, in this preseason? Absolutely. This guy right now is probably penciled in to replace Isaiah Rodgers. And I think if I had to sit down right now and pencil in starting corners, we know Kenny Moore's in the slot. That one's the free space. And then I'm going with Juju Brents and Dallas Flowers if I had to make that bet right now.
And I think I can't argue that. I think you're 100% right. And again, you look at the lack of experience where Dallas Flowers did not. I got to look up the game log exactly, but I don't think he started playing defense like late in the year as like mostly a special teams guy. So we're talking about a rookie on one end and a guy who's played, I mean, maybe 50 snaps total on defense. And it's just like, again, it's still early, but like to make plays early on, like I like the fact that, again, doesn't matter who you're playing, you're out there at least playing well. If they're getting torched, that's a whole other story. But so those are guys that are earning it right now, at least making you feel that the competition at least is deep. Like at least that's also too, like the depth on at corner, especially with how young and inexperienced it is. At least it looks like it's going to be a good battle where a lot of guys here are going to be fighting for playing time. And those two starters, if I'm with you, I'm assuming it's going to be Brent's, and Flowers. At least appearing right now so far through rookie minicamp, OTAs, and then mandatory minicamp, at least it appears like if those two guys are the stars on the outside, they'll have earned it.
Yeah,
like, even if the names aren't there, the competition seems steep.
Yeah, it remains to be seen on what Juju is going to be. But you look at his college tape, and you look at his size, and you look at his athleticism. It's a good fit for what Gus Bradley wants to do. But talking about this time of year, it just makes me laugh because I think of two different guys on completely different ends of the spectrum. Shaq Leonard, legend is always there. He missed this time of year, first of all. He didn't really do anything in the spring. He had a hamstring injury, and he really didn't get out there until training camp. First practice training camp, throw down the middle, he picks off Andrew Luck. Makes a great play. It's one of the legendary things with Shaq Leonard. Like, first thing he did basically as a Colt was intercept Andrew Luck. And then we know where he went.
Not bad.
Right, exactly. It's an okay career after that. But then on the other end is Nick Cross, who was amazing this time last year. And everybody was talking about, how quickly he was coming along and then getting to the season and it just fell off. So you don't know which way it's going to go, but absolutely right now, all signs are positive on the defensive side. Now, offense has got to pick it up, but that's, I think, the duality of this time of year that's always there. If one side of the ball is doing well, the other side isn't, and it's always going to be that way. Unless it's 50-50 every week, you're going to have this feeling, and it never is.
And also, too, I don't think, you mentioned before about the throwing sessions that Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson are going to have in Florida, some receivers. I mean, I don't think you can overstate the importance of that as well, especially when you look at this entire offseason where Michael Pittman Jr. has not been on the field at all. Alec Pierce missed a good chunk of it. Now, he did return from minicamp, but missed a good chunk of OTAs. Josh Downs has not been on the field, I believe, since rookie minicamp, right, George? So he's missed OTAs and mandatory minicamp. So it's like also, and you were just kind of highlighting before, like the passing offense is not just the quarterbacks that are struggling, it's the receivers and tight ends that also are not making all the plays when they're asked to as well. This is going to be a big next 6 weeks here to finally, for Anthony Richardson especially, build some chemistry with the guy he's actually going to be thrown to. Now, I don't know if it's been said who will, I'm sure they'll make time for everyone. But it's like, it's also kind of crazy that we've gone through this offseason, George, and really he's not thrown one pass to who's supposed to be his number one wide receiver this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think he did, I want to say right maybe the very first OTA that we were at, he threw a pass to Michael Pittman, and since then, nothing, and he had rookie minicamp with Josh Downs in the parking lot with Josh Downs and nothing since then. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but that's part of this. And I think the biggest thing for him right now is timing. That's why those things down in Florida are just going to be so huge. He just needs a lot of what he's missing on right now is throwing the ball a split second too late. And full well, that's the difference in the NFL. That makes all the difference in the world at this level. Sometimes it's a little bit long, or he tends to miss high a little bit, but Luck did that. When he's off, it's usually high. We'll see how it goes. Right now, I think we saw him practice 4 or 5, 6 times. It wasn't a lot of practices that we saw because we're only getting one a week. So training camp, to me, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he looks after a summer of breaking it down with these receivers and getting back with his personal coach and working on these fundamentals. I'm sure a lot of his summers will be spent on footwork and mechanics. And then getting to training camp and get to see him every day. And I think I'm really looking forward to that. Getting to see him back to back this week was good. It wasn't the best week he had, but also for timeout. When we show these numbers out, 3 of 7 on Tuesday, 2 of 5 today. First of all, they're obviously small numbers. So you can tell right there they weren't dealing with a ton of reps in full teamwork. But I think that's a total of 4 drives or 4 practice sessions. So it's still not a giant sample size. You got to take that into consideration too.
I want to wrap up the pod by saying this, George. I want to give you a lot of credit. I did not see a Leonardo DiCaprio reference coming from you today. You said it before. I wanted to say something about it, but I didn't get a chance to. And then it slipped my mind. I got to give that was impressive. You are a very cultured man.
That's me. I feel like, extremely cultured all the way through and through.
Yesterday, we're talking about taking punches from Conor McGregor. Today, we're talking about Leo's preference of women. That's what you get in the Blue Horseshoe Pod. That's where you guys subscribe.
Pertains to NFL running backs.
Can't miss it. Can't miss the pod.
Why? You never know what's going to come up on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.
That's right. Oh, that is right. And it's only going to get weirder as training camp goes on and the days start to blend together and silly time gets going. Like, we're about to approach midnight here. So just imagine when we're like 2 weeks into training camp and now, just like the players start to get sick of hitting each other, I'm sure we're going to start to get sick of seeing the same thing over and over again. Maybe George will get sick of seeing me all the time. And who knows? Who the hell knows what could happen? That's why you subscribe on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod, and wherever you do get your podcasts in the bright blue logo, George. If that is not the perfect tease as to why you should subscribe to the pod, I got nothing else then.
I'm with you. Go to YouTube, watch us live. You can see our matching red shirts, like you said. Go to Apple, Spotify, all your favorite spots for podcasts. You never know. I mean, where else are you going to get Leonardo DiCaprio and WrestleMania in the same podcast?
True. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. So that's a very fitting way to end the mini camp day number 2 edition of the Blue Horseshoe Pod. So we will not have a podcast tomorrow because there is no mini camp. We have a Colts right now on basically a 6-week break until training camp starts. We will, though, be back on Tuesday, of course. Just because the Colts are off doesn't mean we are off. We'll take a little bit of a summer break in July, right before training camp starts, but we still got a lot of ideas to throw out. We still got a lot of content to create here. We still have a lot of things to discuss with this team, as well as we do get set for a very important and very intriguing training camp as well. So,
Absolutely.
on that note, have a great weekend. Have a happy Father's Day. George, a very early happy Father's Day to you. Any big plans this weekend? We grilling? We going outside? What we got going here?
I think right now the plan is to go up and see my dad, although he's probably learning this right now from listening on the pod.
Surprise.
Good for him. But I think that's the plan right now. Go up and see my dad, and then I don't know, he might grill. He makes some pretty good hamburgers.
Ooh, nice. Burgers on the grill.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing beats it in the summertime as well. And can we get the guarantee or the classic dad pose Sunday on the couch, passed out, watching the U.S. Open as they make the
There's always a good
final 9?
There's always a good chance of that. If I'm not working, I'm passed out on the couch. Those are pretty much my two. There's 3. I might be chasing my daughter somewhere. She likes to go and play in the front yard with the ball, which I'll just be own up right here. We were talking earlier about my toughness, my athleticism. I've now learned that it is too much for me to turn and throw the ball and kickball in one motion. I tried that, bam, right on the ground. Apparently, my athleticism dropped off to that extent now that I can no longer turn and throw the ball. It's hard getting old, Ryan. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh, what was it like? One of those like comebackers to the pitcher where they field it, turn around, throw it first, and that puts you on your butt?
I was going to field it, trying to make the throw to home because my daughter's running around third.
Oh,
down.
Boy.
Down, boom, in the dirt.
Toughness is questionable. Athletic ability is decreasing. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do the Benjamin Button diet and just somehow reverse age.
It's a good call. My combine results have not been good this summer. That's all I'm saying. Scouting report on me is not solid.
Oh boy. Well, thankfully in our jobs we don't have to do anything athletic. Otherwise we'd be screwed.
I'd be out.
If the Colts asked you to catch a punt, could you do it?
Not now. I could have in high school.
Really?
Now, I can't throw a kickball. I'm not gonna make a bet that I can catch a punt at this point.
That's fair. That's fair. So maybe Father's Day, no kickball.
No kickball.
No embarrassing dad on Father's Day. Monday, Saturday, sure. But maybe Sunday we'll give the old arm and athletic ability a rest as well. So a happy Father's Day to all that are out listening right now. We appreciate you listening. Enjoy the weekend. We will be back on Tuesday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.